All right, you guys, I want to add one more thing to my previous video. I've done a full-on episode about Kundalini energy for men, how you can work with that energy for divine masculine, specifically on a divine love journey, but any divine masculine, identifying as a divine masculine, how you can connect to that energy, raise that energy to the level of the heart, how you can work with that energy to use it for your benefit, because this is what it's meant to. Our life force energy is meant for us to consciously know whether we want to keep it for ourselves or direct it outwards for a specific thing to the benefit of all. And I've mentioned in this video, I kind of want to cover this from a perspective of a feminine as well, because it translates that life force energy and making sure that there's no leakage and keeping it either for yourself or for the benefit of or the collective. It translates a little bit differently for a divine feminine. So for a divine masculine, that life force energy that is formed in our sacral space, our center of creativity, our center of sexuality, sensuality, kundalini, the house of our kundalini, where that energy is created. Oh, a squirrel, sign! Where that energy is created, because most people are dormant and not conscious, operating on a subconscious autopilot that is programmed by the conditioning and by the matrix, without us even knowing, we give this energy freely away, right? So men are programmed to perform. How men can give this energy freely away from themselves and lose that energy. So how men leak that energy is when you are programmed to perform with no meaning, when you are programmed to have that to have activities with no purpose, with no direction, when you are programmed to connect to women, men, other people, sexually through intimacy on a very shallow level, so with no spirit, with no depth, with no love, with no emotion, with no actual connection and commitment. If you are wasting that energy with no intention, we mentioned this in that video, through ejaculation with no intention, so you give that energy away through, again, random experiences, pornography, and so on and so forth. I've covered all that in that video, but I specifically want to translate that to divine feminine energy because it is a little different. And I've mentioned the differences between the Kundalini movement within a man and a woman, and I've mentioned as well, I've done a video about celibacy a while ago. I've mentioned this in that previous video as well. A lot of information, sorry, how it's different. But it's all about keeping that energy. It's connected as well to our solar plexus, so to keeping that energy for ourselves. So this is how, and I've described this in that previous video, how men give that energy away and they lose it without them even knowing, creating an energy leakage for themselves. And I've mentioned in that video as well, again, that life force energy for a man actually can have a physical form, and that is what is being ejaculated. So that is the actual literal life force energy juice that you can give away or decide to hold it for yourself. So in a sense, even if you do ejaculate it, but you do it with an intention, with a divine intention, with a purpose, with connection, with spirit, with tantra, then you do it for the benefit of self and for the benefit of greater collective, especially if you give it away to your divine counterpart feminine, who will know how to transmute it, how to raise it, how to alchemize it, and how to multiply it and return it to you for the portal of the heart, a whole different topic. But when we talk about women and feminine energy, actually, what's important to know that our life force energy doesn't have a physical representation. Our life force energy is that creatrix energy, right? And that energy is represented by self-love and self-worthiness. This is why we always say, and I always teach you guys, that one of the biggest qualities of the divine feminine is that self-love and that self-worthiness. This is what we're supposed to bring into this world. This is what we're supposed to teach others, future generations, our men as well, and so on and so forth. So how a woman gives away that energy. This is why for men, the most important tool to keep that energy for themselves is self-control. If self-control, not to give away to lust, to aggression. Again, we've covered it all in that previous video. But for women, the most important tool not to give your life force energy that doesn't have a physical form to others, but keep it to yourself, or decide who you give it to for the greater benefit of all, where it's going to be multiplied, because that's also the thing. When we give our life force energy to externally, someone else or a specific activity or a specific place or thing, when we do it consciously, we can choose people and places that we know that they will actually, through reciprocity and through alchemy, they will be able to multiply it and return it back to us. This is how we feed to each other, right? So for men, that tool not to give it away will be self-control. And for a woman, will be self-love, because our life force energy is our divinity within that doesn't have a physical representation. So how do we leak that energy? Lack of self-love, people-pleasing, lack of boundaries, not choosing ourselves first. And I don't mean in an egoistic way, but through self-sacrifice, right? Through abandoning ourselves, through giving up on our fulfillment, our pleasure, our free time, our rest for the benefit of others, partners, husbands, children. When a woman for herself comes last on the list, I'm going to care for others, I'm going to feed others, I'm going to have time for others, but I will come last because I don't love myself enough, because others are more important. Again, people pleasing, doormat for others, allowing mistreatment, not having your standards high, allowing people to speak to you poorly, allowing people to treat you poorly, giving your energy when it's not being reciprocated, multiplied, and returned back to you. This is how a woman leaks life force energy. And to close up, I want to mention that remember that whether this is energy that we talk about, so you can be in a feminine or a masculine vessel and you can leak from both ends, right? And you can also, especially again, like I said, we all have masculine and feminine, but we are the embodiment, right? So women, when we talk about feminine vessel and feminine energy, so when you are in a feminine vessel and you identify additionally to that with feminine energy, you've dropped into your feminine energy, you're going to be more vulnerable to leak that energy through the ways that I've explained. So your biggest tool to hold your energy will be self-love, boundaries, and self-worth. Whereas men who identify with masculine energy, especially in the male vessel, they're going to be more vulnerable through that lust and temptation and shallowness, which means that self-control and integrity will be their greatest tool to hold their energy within for themselves.